All right, everybody. Let's dive into something I bet you see every day but never really think about, stormwater management.
Right.
We're taking a deep dive today into the world of physics simulations,
Ugh.
specifically for stormwater.
Okay.
You might be thinking physics.
Yeah.
Boring.
I took that class.
Right. But trust me, this is way cooler than high school physics class.
Much cooler.
We're going to uncover how these simulations can actually help solve real-world problems. Like, I don't know about you, but I hate those annoying road closures after a big storm.
Yeah, nobody likes those.
So you're telling me there's a whole science behind keeping our streets from turning into rivers every time it rains?
Absolutely. And it all starts with understanding how our towns and cities are divided into these things called catchments.
Okay, catchments. I think I vaguely remember that from like geography class or something.
Uh-huh.
But how does that relate to stormwater and physics?
Well, imagine you're a city planner. You're
Okay.
trying to figure out where to put all the drains and how big they need to be.
Right.
You wouldn't just place them randomly, would you?
Well, no, I guess not.
You'd need to understand how water flows through that catchment,
Okay.
how much rain to expect, and where the potential flooding hotspots are.
So these simulations help planners like see the bigger picture?
Exactly. And, it's not just about preventing your basement from flooding,
Oh, for sure. That's important.
although that is important too, but it's about understanding that flow of water through a whole neighborhood or even a whole city.
So it's like a virtual laboratory for water management?
Precisely. We can test different scenarios, like what happens if we get a sudden downpour?
Okay.
What if we add a new park with permeable pavement?
Hold on, permeable pavement.
Yeah,
What's that?
that's where things get really interesting. We're talking about green infrastructure.
Okay.
It's a whole new way of thinking about stormwater management, one that works with nature instead of against it.
So we're not just talking about boring old drains and pipes anymore.
Not at all. Green infrastructure is all about incorporating these natural elements into our urban landscapes. Things like green roofs, rain gardens,
I've heard of those.
and yes, even permeable pavement.
Hmm.
Imagine sidewalks and parking lots that actually absorb rainwater instead of just letting it run off.
That does sound kind of futuristic, but can something like permeable pavement really handle like a massive storm?
It's a fair question, and that's the beauty of these simulations. We can actually test it out.
Oh, cool.
We can compare traditional stormwater systems with these green infrastructure solutions and see how they perform under all kinds of different conditions.
So we can actually see what would happen if, say, we replaced a concrete parking lot with a rain garden?
Exactly. We can model the water flow, see how much gets absorbed, and even calculate the potential reduction in runoff and pollution.
That's amazing. I never realized how much thought and planning goes into something as simple as managing rainwater.
It really is like a whole hidden world operating beneath our feet.
So it sounds like there's more to it than just plugging in some numbers, right?
You're right, there's a whole science behind building these models and making sure they accurately reflect the real world. It involves understanding things like topography, soil type, and even the microclimates within a city.
Okay, now that's starting to sound a little complicated.
Well,
I'm guessing that's where the physics comes in.
exactly. We need to understand the physics of water movement, how it flows, infiltrates, and evaporates.
Okay.
And we need to consider the impact of things like gravity friction and even the Coriolis effect.
The Coriolis effect, isn't that something to do with like the Earth's rotation?
Yeah.
I thought that only mattered for like hurricanes and ocean currents and stuff.
You're right. It does have to do with the Earth's rotation, and while it might seem like a small detail, it can actually influence the direction of water flow in large-scale stormwater systems.
Wow.
It's all about connecting the dots and understanding how all these seemingly unrelated factors can interact.
This is blowing my mind. So you're telling me that something as simple as rain can involve all this complex science and physics?
It really can, and that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating.
Yeah.
We're going beyond the surface and exploring all these intricate mechanisms that keep our cities dry and our water clean.
Okay, so we've talked about catchments and simulations and even this green infrastructure, but I'm still curious about those pumps we see in like drainage ditches.
Yeah. The pump?
How do they fit into all of this?
They're like the unsung heroes of stormwater management. They're the ones responsible for moving water out of those low-lying areas and preventing them from turning into lakes.
But wouldn't bigger pumps just use more energy?
That's a great point.
Yeah.
It's not just about getting the biggest pumps possible.
Right.
We need to find that sweet spot between efficiency cost and environmental impact.
So the simulations help us figure that out too.
Exactly. We can model different pump sizes and configurations to see how they impact energy use, flooding risk, and even the potential for noise pollution.
This is incredible. I never realized how much thought and planning goes into something as seemingly simple as managing rainwater.
It really is like a whole hidden world
It is.
operating beneath our feet.
Yeah, and we just never think about it.
Nope.
Thank you so much. This is fascinating. I can't wait to learn more.
No.
It's funny, before this deep dive, I never really gave much thought to storm drains. Now I'm seeing them everywhere.
I know what you mean. Once you start to see the complexity behind something we take for granted, it's hard to unsee it.
It's like I've unlocked a secret level in my understanding of how cities work.
Exactly. And it makes you realize how much goes into keeping everything running smoothly, even when we're dealing with something as unpredictable as weather.
And speaking of unpredictable weather,
Yeah.
with climate change bringing more extreme rainfall events,
Yeah.
I imagine stormwater management is becoming even more critical these days.
You're absolutely right. As our climate changes, we're seeing more intense storms and heavier rainfall, and that puts a real strain on existing infrastructure.
So what can we do about it? Are those traditional systems even equipped to handle these new challenges?
That's the million-dollar question. In some cases, we might need to upgrade existing infrastructure,
Mhm.
Bigger pipes, more powerful pumps.
Okay.
But that's not always the most sustainable or cost-effective solution.
So we're back to green infrastructure again.
Exactly. Green infrastructure offers a more adaptable and resilient approach to stormwater management by mimicking natural processes. We can create systems that are better able to handle these fluctuations in rainfall and reduce the overall burden on our drainage networks.
I'm starting to see how this all ties together, but I'm wondering, how do we actually implement these green infrastructure solutions?
Right.
Is it as simple as just like planting a few trees and calling it a day?
It would be lovely if it were that simple.
Yeah.
But in reality, it requires careful planning and integration with existing infrastructure. We need to consider things like soil type topography and the specific needs of the surrounding community.
So it's not just about planting trees, it's about creating a whole ecosystem within our cities.
You could say that think of it as designing a network of interconnected green spaces that work together to manage stormwater naturally.
Oh.
Rain gardens that collect and filter runoff green roofs that absorb rainwater and reduce that urban heat island affects permeable pavements that allow water to seep back into the ground.
Uh-huh.
It's all about working with nature instead of against it.
This is making me rethink my entire neighborhood. I'm already picturing rain gardens and all the empty spaces and green roofs sprouting up on every building.
It's exciting to think about the possibilities, and it's not just about aesthetics.
Right.
These green spaces also provide numerous benefits for human health and well-being.
Okay, I'm really sold on this green infrastructure thing.
Good.
But let's be realistic for a second. How do we convince people to adopt these solutions?
Right.
I imagine there might be some resistance to change, especially when it comes to things like permeable pavements or green roofs.
You're right. There can be some hesitation, especially when people are unfamiliar with these concepts.
Yeah.
But that's where education and awareness come in.
Hmm.
We need to demonstrate the multiple benefits of green infrastructure, not just for stormwater management,
Right.
but also for the environment, the economy, and even our communities.
So it's about changing the narrative from stormwater management to something more holistic, something that resonates with people on a deeper level.
Exactly. We need to show people that this is about more than just keeping our streets dry. It's about creating healthier, more resilient, and more beautiful cities for everyone.
I love that it's about reimagining our relationship with water and seeing it as an asset rather than a nuisance.
Precisely. And it's about recognizing that we all have a role to play in protecting this precious resource.
Speaking of roles, I'm curious, what can everyday people do to contribute to better stormwater management?
Oh, there's actually a lot you can do. Even small changes in your own yard or neighborhood can make a difference.
Like what?
Well, for starters, you can install rain barrels to collect rainwater from your roof. You can plant native trees and shrubs that help absorb water and prevent erosion. You can even create a rain garden in your yard to capture and filter runoff.
Those are all great ideas, but what about those of us who live in apartments or don't have much outdoor space?
You can still make a difference. You can advocate for green infrastructure initiatives in your city. You can support local organizations that are working to improve water quality.
Okay.
You can even just spread the word and educate others about the importance of stormwater management.
I love that even if we don't have a backyard, we can still be advocates for change.
Absolutely. Every voice matters. And the more people we have demanding sustainable solutions, the faster we can move towards a more water-resilient future.
This conversation has been so inspiring. I
Yep.
feel like I've gone from feeling clueless about stormwater management to being a passionate advocate for green infrastructure.
That's wonderful to hear. And remember, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to explore and learn about the fascinating world of water and the ways we can manage it sustainably.
Okay, I'm ready to keep diving deeper, but before we do, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, the impact of climate change on stormwater management. I'm curious, what are some of the specific challenges that cities are facing as a result of these more extreme weather events?
That's a great question. One of the biggest challenges is simply the increased volume of water we're seeing during storms. You know, older drainage systems were designed for a different climate,
Yeah.
and they're often overwhelmed by the amount of runoff we're experiencing now.
So it's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. The systems just aren't equipped to handle the new reality.
Exactly. And when those systems fail, we see the consequences in the form of flooded streets, basements, and even entire neighborhoods.
That sounds pretty scary.
Yeah.
What can we do to mitigate those risks?
Well, besides upgrading existing infrastructure and implementing green infrastructure solutions, we also need to think about adapting to the new reality of a changing climate.
What do you mean by adapting?
It means recognizing that we can't just rely on the same approaches we've used in the past. We need to be more proactive and forward-thinking in our approach to stormwater management.
So it's about being prepared for the unexpected and having systems in place that can handle a wider range of conditions.
Precisely, it's about building resilience into our infrastructure and our communities so that we're better equipped to weather the storms both literally and figuratively.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive. I feel like I've gained a whole new appreciation for the challenges and opportunities of stormwater management in a changing world. But I'm wondering, are there any specific examples of cities that are doing this really well?
Oh, yeah.
Places that we can look to for inspiration and best practices?
Absolutely. There are many cities around the world that are leading the way in sustainable stormwater management. One great example is Philadelphia, with its innovative Green City Clean Waters program.
Tell me more about that. What makes Philadelphia a model for other cities?
Philadelphia has set this ambitious goal of reducing its stormwater runoff by 85% through a combination of green infrastructure projects and regulatory changes.
Wow, 85%.
They've implemented everything from rain gardens and green roofs to permeable pavements and underground storage systems.
Wow, that's impressive. But I imagine a project of that scale must require significant investment and collaboration.
It certainly does. It involves
Sure.
partnerships between city agencies, community organizations, businesses, and residents. But the results speak for themselves. Philadelphia has seen significant improvements in water quality, reduced flooding, and even economic benefits from the creation of green jobs.
That's a great example of how sustainability and economic growth can go hand in hand. It's inspiring to see a city taking such a proactive and holistic approach to stormwater management. Are there any other examples you can share?
Of course, another city that's doing some really innovative things is Copenhagen, Denmark. They've embraced the concept of cloudburst management.
Cloudburst management.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which focuses on creating a network of interconnected green spaces and waterways to handle these extreme rainfall events.
Cloudburst management. That sounds intense. Tell me more about how that works.
Essentially, it involves redirecting rainwater away from critical infrastructure and into these designated areas where it can be safely absorbed or stored. They've created parks that double as retention basins, streets that channel water into bioswales, and even rooftops that collect rainwater for irrigation.
Wow, it sounds like they're really integrating water management into the very fabric of the city.
Exactly, and they've seen tremendous success in reducing flood risk and improving the overall quality of life for residents.
These are such inspiring examples. It gives me hope that we can find innovative and sustainable solutions to the challenges of stormwater management, even in the face of a changing climate.
I share your optimism. It's all about thinking creatively, collaborating across sectors, and embracing nature as a partner in this endeavor.
Well said, but I'm wondering, are there any downsides or challenges to implementing these green infrastructure solutions? It can't all be sunshine and rainbows, right?
You're right. There are always trade-offs to consider. One challenge is the upfront cost of implementing green infrastructure projects.
Okay.
They often require a larger initial investment than traditional gray infrastructure solutions.
But I imagine there are long-term cost savings. Right.
Yeah.
It's especially when you consider the reduced risk of flooding and the avoided costs of repairs and cleanup.
Exactly. Green infrastructure offers significant long-term economic benefits, both in terms of reduced maintenance costs and increased property values. It's about shifting our perspective from short-term expenses to long-term investments.
That makes sense. Are there any other challenges we should be aware of?
Another potential hurdle is the need for ongoing maintenance. Green infrastructure requires care and attention, just like any other system we need, to ensure that rain gardens are properly planted and maintain that green roofs are functioning correctly and that permeable pavements are kept free of debris.
So it's not a set it and forget it solution. It requires ongoing commitment and community involvement.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I see that as a positive thing. It creates opportunities for education, community building, and a sense of ownership over our shared water resources.
I love that perspective. It's about empowering people to become stewards of their environment.
Precisely. And it's about recognizing that we all have a stake in ensuring the health and resilience of our water systems.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive. I feel like I've gone from feeling intimidated by the complexity of stormwater management to being excited about the possibilities of green infrastructure.
I'm thrilled to hear that. And remember, this is just the beginning of the conversation. There's so much more to explore and learn about the fascinating world of water and the ways we can work with nature to create a more sustainable future.
You know, it's amazing how much we've uncovered in this deep dive just by talking about stormwater management.
It is.
It's like pulling on a thread and discovering this whole interconnected web of systems and solutions.
Yeah, and it just shows how important it is to take a holistic approach to problem solving, considering not just the immediate issue, but the wider implications and the potential ripple effects.
This deep dive has definitely made me more aware of how interconnected everything is, even in something as seemingly simple as rainwater.
Hmm.
But I'm wondering, what happens when those systems that we've been talking about fail?
Yeah.
When a storm overwhelms the infrastructure and those best laid plans kind of go out the window?
That's a crucial question, and unfortunately, it's one that many communities are facing more and more often as climate change brings more intense rainfall events.
Right.
And when stormwater management systems fail, the consequences can be pretty devastating.
We're talking flooded streets, overwhelmed sewage systems, property damage, even risks to public health.
Exactly, and the impacts are often felt most acutely by vulnerable communities who may not have the resources to cope with these disasters.
It's a sobering reminder that these systems aren't just about convenience or aesthetics, they're about protecting lives and livelihoods.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And it just underscores the urgency of investing in resilient infrastructure and adapting our cities to the realities of a changing climate.
So what can we do to prepare for these challenges? Is it all about building bigger pipes and higher seawalls, or is there a more nuanced approach?
Well, traditional infrastructure upgrades definitely have their place.
Yeah.
But we need to move beyond just reacting to problems after they occur,
Right.
We need to be more proactive and forward-thinking in our approach.
So it's about shifting from a reactive mindset to a preventative one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that involves embracing this multifaceted approach that combines traditional infrastructure upgrades with green infrastructure solutions,
Right.
community engagement, and smart planning.
It seems like everything comes back to interconnectedness and collaboration.
We can't just rely on a single solution, a top-down approach,
Yeah.
We need to involve communities, experts, and policymakers in a collaborative effort to create more resilient and adaptable cities.
This has been such an insightful deep dive. I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective on the complexities and importance of stormwater management. But before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with something to ponder.
Okay, shoot.
I want you to think about your own community.
Okay.
Have you noticed any areas that are particularly prone to flooding after a heavy rainfall? Maybe there's a street that always seems to turn into a river or park that basically becomes a swamp.
Good point.
Once you've identified those areas, ask yourself what steps could be taken to improve the situation. Could a rain garden be installed in that low-lying park? Could permeable pavement be used to reduce runoff from that parking lot?
Those are all great questions.
It's about empowering ourselves to become citizen scientists.
Yeah.
And advocates for change. We don't have to wait for the experts or policymakers to tell us what to do. We can actually take action in our own communities.
Exactly.
So the next time you see a storm drain, don't just see a hole in the ground. See it as a gateway to this fascinating and complex world that's crucial to the health and well-being of our cities and our planet.
I love that. And remember, even small actions can make a big difference. By working together, we can create a more resilient and water-secure future for generations to come.